Welcome, dear listeners, to a podcast that's about to transform the way you lead, the way you grow and thrive in your life and career. Get ready to embark on a journey filled with inspiration and self-discovery. This is Afsheen, the host of the Getting Real podcast. And this season, I'm delighted to be joined by none other than my co-host, Vicki Davitashvili. Vicki?
Are you ready to embrace the joy of leadership, the power of self-discovery, and the limitless potential of your career, and ultimately your entire life? Join us on this incredible journey of transformation.
Yep, stay tuned because the best is yet to come. So welcome back, listeners, for the Getting Real masterclasses that Vicki and I have conversations over key topics that are enablers in leadership and how we lead, but also how we want to support others to lead as well. So today's topic is on what's important about having healthy conflict. In my experience, and I'm going to ask Vicki to share her experience as well, there's a lot of workshops on the topic of healthy conflict. There's a lot of workshops on how to have good, effective conflict in a team. But what has been standing in the way of a lot of leaders is not the skill as much as the will to step into the space. And so I am delighted to be joined by my co-host and co-conspirator today to unpack what is getting in the way of the willingness to have healthy conflict with your exec team, with your leadership team, and what might be the benefits to having healthy conflict that might create a valuable impact in delivering business results. So Vicki Davitashvili, my friend, welcome today to our conversation on why it's important to have healthy conflict.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And boy, Afsheen, do you challenge me sometimes, and you ask such deep and profound questions. And I love that. I love this. It's interesting that as you were talking about conflict, one of the things that comes up for me is think about people pleasers. Why are people pleasers? Because they're afraid of conflict. Why are they afraid of conflict? Because they're afraid of tension. A lot of times tension goes back to our childhood. Kids of especially divorced households or households where there had been tension, what they've done is they created a protective mechanism to protect themselves. So they will do anything to avoid conflict in the household or to avoid conflict in their lives. And let's face it, conflict is incredibly uncomfortable. Think about, I'm going to give you another example in my life where I was running a half marathon, and I asked a friend who was only running 3 miles at the moment. I said, hey, why don't you raise your hand and let's go in and run a half marathon. She had 1,001 reasons why she couldn't do it. And then she finally raised her hand and she did it. And what happened was she was able to run 13 miles within a month or two after she and I agreed upon that. And interestingly enough, for 2 years, she had resisted joining me in running the half marathon. So I think this goes back to, it's not about can't, it's that I won't, right? And it's a deliberate choice that people are making to not enter into conflict. I think it honestly does go back to fear, and it goes to fear of maybe failure, fear that I can't do it, fear of maybe I'm wrong, right? What if I say something and other people perceive me as stupid, or other people perceive that what I'm saying is wrong? I think people just naturally don't like tension. Like, think about it. How many people avoid going to the gym and doing the hard things? Why? Because they don't want to feel that tension in their body. They don't want to feel the tension and the body aches that comes afterwards. But to answer your question, why is this so important? Well, if you don't go to the gym and you don't lift the weights and you don't make your muscles uncomfortable, you will never have any muscles and you will have inner deterioration. It's the same thing. If you don't exercise that muscle of tension and looking at it not through the lens of fear, but through the lens of, what can I learn through this? How can I come into this tension with an open mind rather than coming at it from the place of I am right and you're wrong, coming at it from the place of I have a point of view, you have a point of view, I'm willing, again, not can't, but won't, I am willing to hear what you have to say. And let's see, maybe what you have to say does have some kind of weight and validity to it. So I'll pause here, but like those are the feelings and the thoughts that are coming up for me as we delve into this very interesting topic.
Oh, Vicki, I really love your metaphor. It brought it to life for me. You know, if you are not willing to experience the tension in your body, then you will allow your muscles to deteriorate. So the value of the tension and value of holding that tension and being willing to be in that space. And I was telling you before our call today, on a less physical, more metaphysical level, because I've been reading this book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. And the reason I'm reading the book is because the Phoenix Coaching Company holds a leadership book club once every quarter. And I have not just been reading this book, but I have been wrestling with this book. So moving from the physical example of going to the gym, the metaphysical example of going within and wrestling with some held beliefs due to this book, which have forced me to look at my held beliefs and challenge my held beliefs. And that conflict within has required so much courage and so much willingness to hold the tension. But I deeply believe that if I can hold this space for a little bit longer, just as you and I were discussing, that on the other side of this internal conflict, I will be a more evolved person. I'll have a more evolved perspective, and I'll be able to hold a more evolved space in the world for my clients, for my family, for my colleagues. And so I love where you began with this. We are not raised often for family reasons, perhaps because we are women, so women shouldn't be in conflict. For so many reasons, conflict is almost the equivalent of bad. Conflict bad. Peacemaking
Yes.
good.
Yes.
Conflict bad, peacemaking good. And so there is a label, even in ourselves, within ourselves, and it's almost as though it's part of our DNA now. Conflict is bad. So as I'm listening to you and me going on about how we wrestle with conflict in different ways, physically, metaphysically, in our lives, it's so fascinating to me that it comes down to a very simple equation. Until now, and for many of us, conflict has equaled bad. It's as simple as that. And so how do we begin to see and rewrite within ourselves and through our actions that conflict is actually a good thing? And as I was saying earlier, that's not something that happens in a 2-hour bite-sized workshop. That's the work that happens within. We have to reprogram ourselves almost to begin to look at what's good about conflict in order for us to be able to be available for it and to be able to utilize all the tools that we maybe learn in a 2-hour workshop. Vicki, I would love to hear from you. What makes conflict good then? What comes up for you if I ask you that question?
Oh, I think there's so much good in conflict. And I'll give you a couple of examples from my life. So conflict to me is self-empowerment. Only a self-empowered person has the willingness to step into that discomfort. 5 years ago when I went on this journey of self-discovery and I was really evolving and stepping into my power, which I didn't really realize I was doing, the very first thing that I started to do is I started to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that became my mantra. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And there were a couple of things that I had done. I would do it through low-level risks. So on a personal level, I took pottery classes, knowing that I couldn't even put the clay on the clay wheel. It was awfulness. But I showed up for myself 6 weeks in a row, and I was embarrassed the entire time. But instead of kind of like seeing myself as a victim, I chose to laugh at myself and my complete inability to do pottery. And I was totally laughing at myself the entire time. I took tennis lessons, and knowing that I'm incredibly uncoordinated, I would show up and I would shake on the tennis court and be like, oh my God, I'm never going to hit this ball and I'm going to look like the moron on this court. I showed up for myself for 9 months in a row. And you know what? There came a point when I did hit the ball, and it was insane. It was so exciting. And I did a ton of things that, got me uncomfortable. And I became okay with that. That translated into my ability to find my voice at my previous job. And I started raising my hand and saying like, hey, I know I'm ready for a promotion. Like, what needs to happen in order for me to get promoted? I was assuming that I was getting promoted. I was no longer asking, begging for it. I was assuming I was getting it because I got into the mode of, I know I'm worthy. But more importantly, I found the inner strength to voice the fact that I was worthy. And there was always this inner tension in me where I was raised to be humble. I was raised to just like, you will be recognized for a job well done, right? And waiting for someone else to control my destiny. Whereas when you become comfortable with being uncomfortable, you start to control your own destiny and you start to be okay with the tension and you start to release the outcome. Like, you promote me, great. You don't promote me, no problem. There are other jobs out there in the world. Right? And that's the energy of self-empowerment. And I'll give you one more example of that. Recently, one of the things that we struggle with as working moms, especially, right, is balancing work and life. And there's so much tension with that, right? Every time I would say, hey, I want to do this class, there would be tension in my home. Oh my God, you're never going to be around. There would be all this guilt laden on me. Oh my God, I'm never going to see you. And a couple of months ago, or no, actually like a month or two ago, we were driving in the car, the four of us, and I was so excited because I was getting these coaching clients and they wanted to work with me. And my husband was like, great, now I'm really never going to see you. And you know what? For the first time in my life, I chose not to be a people pleaser, and I chose not to sweep that comment under the rug and to say, like usually I would be like, oh, it's going to be okay. And just to like avoid the conflict. But I turned to him and I said, you know what? Instead of making me feel bad, I need you to celebrate me because this is an amazing moment for me. And instead of you making me feel bad, I would love it if I had a partner who was celebrating me in this moment and celebrating the joy and the win that I'm experiencing right now in my life. And, of course, that opened up dialogue. Well, I'm not blah, 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 blah. I was like, and I thought that you talk about being Zen. And I said, you know what? I also talk about being authentic. And right now, I'm being authentic with you. And it was really the first time that I was in that much energy of self-empowerment. But after that, I don't hear that comment anymore because he knows I won't tolerate it. and I won't sweep it under the rug. And I'm a lot happier. And so, I just think that conflict opens you up for that tension, discomfort, but also puts you on the path towards self-empowerment. And how you do one thing, Afsheen, is how you do everything. So how you show up for yourself in your personal life is how you're going to show up at work. So I'm going to pause right there.
I love what you just shared, and you're so right. Hold the tension, and then be ready for the self-empowerment that follows. And I think the question is, first of all, how ready are you to hold the tension? And so many of the examples you shared are examples that perhaps we don't realize that we're doing in our daily lives. So when you come against a conflict tension, you can really stop and think to myself, where did I feel this tension before? I survived it, right? Where was that discomfort? I survived it. I love your examples. I have so many small examples that build up to my skill set to be able to hold the tension. I know how to hold the tension. And now, after I've learned how to hold the tension, I recognize holding the tension is good. Moving into that space of, well, now I'm self-empowered. That in itself is another space that you need to hold and get comfortable holding. Many of us, because being self-empowered also means that that's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders for seeing a lot more things through than you might have been willing to do before. Many of us have to consciously step into that space and choose to be more self-empowered. And it's sometimes something you need to ask yourself. Are you ready to be more self-empowered? Or are you ready to hold that space of, this is happening to me? You and I discussed this. This is happening to me rather than through me. If you're ready to step into that space of through me rather than to me, and that's a big shift to make, I think the next step, which is the third kind of place that you're ending up going, is, so step 1 and step 2, hold the tension, be self-empowered. And the third one for me is whoever you're in conflict with, and I'll share an example from work. Recently, I was in conflict with a colleague. This colleague had every reason to be in conflict with me. We were trying to achieve the same outcome, a best outcome for the business, but we both had different views of how that should be done. He wanted me to do it his way. I wanted to do it my way. And that's okay. What was not okay was that for me was I did not want to do it his way. I didn't see that his way was incorporating what I knew was right for the business, specifically from an HR perspective, because I would be the HR expert within that team. However, instead of getting angry with him, getting frustrated with him, avoiding him, there's so many options, right? When conflict shows up, there's so many things. But there was one thing I was ready to do. I was ready to lean in and trust that this individual also had the best interest of the business at heart. And so what I did after holding the tension and feeling self-empowered that this is my function, I leaned in and I said, I know that what you're suggesting is what you feel is best for the business. And I honor that. I want to honor that. However, I am the subject matter expert on this specific topic. So let's discuss this. And you put your arguments on the table, you put your thoughts, and specifically what it is you're trying to avoid happening. And I'll let you know how I think we can avoid exactly those things happening, even if we use my way more than we use your way. And we were able to come to a very civil conclusion to how to get through this and achieve the best business outcome in that specific situation. And so in my view, once we've held the tension and we've taken our self-empowered stance where we believe in ourselves and believe that we have a reason to have a strong voice in this conversation, having empathy for and extending grace to the person you're in conflict with, and saying, I'm bringing you along on this ride, let's go on this ride together, is incredibly helpful in getting to the other side. And to be honest, we were both then heard, seen, respected, and that resulted in us being able to move forward. So when we started this conversation, we were talking about why is healthy conflict so important? And we were purposely trying to avoid what to do in order to achieve healthy conflict. So I'm going to stop here and ask you for your thoughts, having been here and been through this entire conversation. What is maybe your one key takeaway in terms of why you think healthy conflict is important as an outcome of this conversation we've just had? And then I'll share mine.
Why I think healthy conflict is important is because it's how you make 1 + 1 = 11. Do you know what I mean? It is so much bigger than the sum total of its parts. Because what it helps you do is it enables growth. It enables evolution. And it enables growth and evolution in two ways. One is inner growth and evolution, because you were willing to get through that tension. And that's an inner struggle that we all struggle with, that fear of conflict. And when you're able to overcome that, once again, you've grown. You're like, I can do this. I'm safe. I'm still safe after this, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that inner growth. But then I think there's that outer growth where your example is beautiful in that you and your business partner were able to get to a place where you're heard, you're seen, and instead of being enemies, you're now collaborators in finding the best outcome for the greater good for the business, right? And so the business impact that you two are going to deliver together is going to be so much far greater than maybe had it been done just your way or just his way, right? So there's benefit both from inner and outer. So that's where, I'm going with this, and that's what's really coming up for me. How about you, Afsheen?
I love that you shared that. That's so true. And I love that that's sort of what came up for you. And sort of what came up for me, the word that kept coming up was sustainable. If we don't go that path, what we're basically doing is pushing things under rugs, bypassing, holding resentment. None of these outcomes are sustainable. And if we go through it, if we choose to walk that path and go through it, we come out at the other side and we have a deeper, higher respect for those that we had these conversations with, and they for us. And we are able to go even deeper the next time. And we have these sustainable discussions and conversations and solutions that incorporate different perspectives as well. And so that's the word that's coming up for me, is it's not the easiest way, but it's the most sustainable way to hold a space in which people have different opinions, so that you can continue to do that as you go forward effectively and more effectively and more effectively. Wow, Vicki, wow. Can you believe where we landed with this conversation? Amazing.
Yeah.
You are such an inspiration. Thank you so, so much for sharing your perspectives and your thoughts and your experiences. It's always such a pleasure.
Thank you, Afsheen. Thank you for asking the thought-provoking kind of inner introspection questions. Without the question, there would be no answer. So I so appreciate the curiosity with which you always come to these conversations. So thank you.
Stay tuned, because the best is yet to come.